is making my corset. So I started with a plain white cotton and I did a lino print. But the first one didn't work out well, so I tried it again and redid the screen, and then it worked. So then I cut out all my pattern pieces, and then this is my lining fabric, and I also did an interfacing because of it was not thick enough and it didn't hold its structure. So here it is holding itself up nicely, and this is what the pattern looks like all cut up together. Here I'm starting to mix up my heat transfer paints, and with this you have to be really careful for health and safety to not get any powder in your eyes or anything, and just ensuring I didn't spill it anywhere or anything, or get it on other people's garments. So I just needed to get like the green and the yellow and the purple for the flowers, and I think that I successfully made all of these colours to what I wanted, and I did have to mix a couple different times to ensure I would get the right colours, and I did try it out on a test piece of fabric to start off with because I wanted to ensure that it would be the right colours. And here's me painting them on and trying it first of all it didn't work, so I applied more paint onto it, as you can see me doing here, and I also kept the heat on for longer to ensure that I would get a better heat transfer. And here, this is my test. I made sure to keep the iron on for a bit longer than normal to ensure I would get a bright, vibrant colour. And here is me doing fabric crayons, and I thought this would be a nice touch because it made my patterns really bright and vibrant and stand out. And embroidery, and you can see how my heat transfer turned out. I think it turned out really well. I thought embroidery was a good way to make some 3D texture, and these carrots actually didn't take as long as I thought, so that was a success. And here you have to be careful with health and safety to not stab yourself with the needle, because it could poke yourself or others, and to ensure that with the thread you didn't wrap it around your finger or anything and lose your circulation. And I just did a basic stitch because I felt this would be most effective. And for the stalk I decided to do beads because it gave a really nice 3D and bright effect. And throughout I made sure I tightened my hoop to ensure my embroidery was as tight as it could be and it would stay. And I also found this method easier, pushing it like down and up, like not doing it down and up and doing it across, which was a faster way and made it easier because embroidery does take a long time, but it was still neat, so I found this was the best method to use. This is me beading, and I thought these green beads would work the best, and I thought if I did a couple at a time it'd be easier. Also, beads are choking hazards, so when I was working with them I obviously made sure that any animals or any younger kids couldn't get to them when I was using them. And yeah, I did a couple more on that one because I felt like even if it was slightly looser it would still give a nice effect. So I thought that was fine, and some of them wouldn't fit on the needles, so I had to ensure that I was picking out the right ones, and the ones I didn't use I kept to use for future projects because I didn't want to waste them. Here I undid some stitches because I accidentally added too many beads, which made a big bulk. So I took off some beads to ensure that my final piece still looked up to standards and neat, else it would have poked out and looked unfinished. And I thought that was a good way to to ensure that my work stayed neat and I paid attention to my detail. Other than that, I feel like I was successful in beading and embroidering and adding these little details, and I felt like I maybe should have added a bit more instead of just doing it to one thing, to try out different stitches and not just doing a simple stitch. Here I'm trying out the puff paint. This was my first sample and I think it turned out really well, and I thought I would video it to show how it actually puffs up in real time. This one I added slightly more paint to it to see if it would have a greater effect, and I feel like it had a bigger and greater effect, and it looked more bubbly and gave off a better representation, as I feel like sometimes pumpkins do have some little like warts. I used 2 tones for this to ensure that it didn't look like just an orange blob. And here I tried out fabric paint before, so I thought I would do it on my final piece, and I felt like the pepper was an easier option because I could still get shading in there, but because it was quite a large surface, I felt like I wouldn't have enough time to do embroidery in as much detail if I were to do it to this bigger surface. But I did embroider some little seeds on the inside of the peppers to get a good effect, and I made darker colours and lighter colours to get a good blend, because I wanted to try and make it as realistic and to show how natural it is, and to kind of suggest that all of these fruits and veg are so bright and they just look really good to eat, and it kind of represents how fruit and veg can brighten up your life and kind of change the way your life is and how your body is, and kind of from that badness that the processed food makes, this makes your body healthy and bright and nice. I had never done needle felting before. We did wet felting, so I thought I would try and do some needle felting. I did it on a test piece, but I thought to get the best blueberry, I needed to use a couple different tones, and basically with needle felting, you just get a needle and a block and you just stab it repeatedly, and the little hooks on the needle catch them and then push them through the fabric. And I found the best technique was rolling it up in like a little ball before. I had to make sure I also held the fabric taut, because or else I wouldn't get a good effect, and there I was scraping like the edges to ensure that the little bits on the edges would like come in and wouldn't have that messy look. And I just added like shading, so added darker, and in the middle I added like a little piece of black felt to represent the middle of a blueberry, which I think really nicely represented it, and it was nice having a pop of blue. Another health and safety hazard is the felting needle. It is really sharp and can really pierce your finger, so I had to be careful. So for my corset, I made bias binding and put it through inside these channels and during the middle, to ensure that I could have channels for my boning, as you can see in this. And the cabbage, I did a little bit of freehand embroidery on the machine with wooding in behind to give a 3D effect. Here I'm pinning the lining and the outer fabric together. I'm making sure both good sides are together, and then both the ends are on the outside, and I made sure each panel matched at the top and the bottom so that it would be easier to stitch. I also left out the two sides so then I could I could turn it through and get a really neat, nice effect. So here I'm stitching the top and all my seams are matching, and I made sure to make my seams lay flat, and it also caught the top of the boning channels so that the boning wouldn't fall out. Here I am just ironing my corset flat because of the 2 layers were slightly sticking out, and here is my final look.